Welcome to the Khan Academy Daily Homeroom. This is a way that we're trying to stay in touch and help support parents, teachers, and students as we go through this school closure situation. Many of y'all know Khan Academy, we're a not-for-profit with a mission of providing a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And we could have never predicted the scenario we're now in, this very suboptimal situation. But over the last 10 years or so, we've been building resources that now can really help you as a student, a parent, or a teacher bridge, make sure that everyone can keep learning through this crisis. I do want to remind folks that we are not for profit. We are funded by philanthropic donations from folks like yourself. So if you're in a position to do so, please think about donating to Khan Academy. You can see some links on this screen right over here. I do want to give a special shout out to several corporate help us fund our gap. We were running at a deficit even before this crisis started, and now our usage is about 250% of normal. And so you can imagine our budget situation has gotten even a little bit more serious. So special thanks to Bank of America, which was really the first to step up that first weekend when the school closures were happening and we were seeing that traffic spike, followed closely by AT&T, Google.org, and Novartis. So whether you're an individual or someone who represents a corporation, we still need help. We're still running at a deficit, and we have a lot of ideas of what we would like to do to support more folks through this crisis, but we are somewhat gated by resources at the moment. Now, the fun of this session is we want to make it as interactive as possible. So whatever social media you're watching this on, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or someplace else, we're always adding new things to it. Feel free to ask questions on the discussion board. And this is a forum, very informal, literally ask anything. I would like to be surprised. No question will offend us. And it's fun to discuss not just how Khan Academy resources might be used or how we might navigate this crisis or implications in education. These are all very interesting topics, but I'm also happy to answer questions about other things that are interesting to you, or maybe sometimes we want to talk about things other than COVID right now, but we can obviously talk about that as well. And I have team members on Khan Academy, and Dan, who will join us, and oh, there's Dan right over there, who will help myself and Dan, and some of our team members are going to be looking at the comments as they come in, and so we will answer any questions that you might have. And so if I look, and then we do have a few announcements that we've been making over the last couple of days. One of them is we released these schedules about 3-4 weeks ago, that first weekend when the closures were happening, and we got a lot of feedback from parents, students, and teachers that they would want even more detailed resources. So above and beyond the live stream, the schedules, the webinars we're running, we released learning plans for students to keep them learning through the summer, not just through the end of the school year, but also leveraging summer for a time of learning. And so these are, if you go to our main, COVID response center, you can see the URLs on the screen. You will see these new learning plans, and depending on whether you're third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, all the way up through algebra and algebra 2 and geometry, a week-by-week goals for getting mastery on Khan Academy. So highly encourage folks to check that out and keep learning over a break. And so let's see, we're starting to get some questions. One from YouTube, Anuj Bhagwan says, "Hey Sal, what motivates you to always push the limits?" I don't know if I'm always pushing the limits, but I think the things that Khan Academy is working on and our mission and what we aspire to do, there's urgency to it. You have, even before this COVID crisis, you have hundreds of millions of students around the world, arguably billions, who have access to some form of schooling but could use more supports. You have millions of teachers around the world who know that they want to support their students in better ways, but it's difficult if you're a teacher in a classroom of 30 students and every student has their own different learning needs, is learning at a different pace. They need tools to be able to support them. And all of these things of, how do you allow more people to have access to world-class resources? How do you create better tools for teachers? How do you connect that to opportunity that exists in the real world with, higher education or internships or jobs? Those were always important, and they've just now become a lot more important because of this COVID crisis. So I speak for myself, and I speak for a lot of the team members and a lot of the folks supporting Khan Academy. There's an urgency here. I always think about, for every Albert Einstein we know about, or every Marie Curie we know about, how many others were never able to fulfill their potential. And that's a shame, even on an individual level, that they could have maybe done so much more. And it's also a shame for humanity, because that person could have found the cure for a disease, or could have found a way to solve a major issue in our society. And I suspect that for every Albert or Alberta Einstein we discover, historically there's probably been 50 or 100 that we don't discover, that never got the educational opportunities, never got to tap into their potential. And so if Khan Academy can be part of the solution to increase by an order of magnitude, by a factor of 10, the number that we can discover, and not just those very special circumstances like an Albert Einstein, but the whole distribution, so more people can participate in the economy. We're definitely getting into a world with automation that you need higher level skills in order to participate. We know what's happening with robotics, with computing. That's going to be able to do a lot of the skills that labor has historically done. And so as we get more productive, we have two choices. We either have to get all of humanity to be able to participate in the knowledge economy, and I hope Khan Academy can play a role there, or we're going to have tougher times. And obviously what's going on economically now makes that even clearer. So let's see, other questions that I'm getting. I'm having my regular mouse is a little strange right now, so please bear with me a little bit. So there is, from Facebook, Neon Khan asks, Sal, can you speak Bengali for me, please? Any of my Bengali family members will cringe if I start to speak Bengali. কিন্তু আমি বলতে পারি, আমার accent খুবই বাজে। এটার জন্য আমি অনেক বাংলা বলি না, কিন্তু আমি চেষ্টা করি. So for those of you who do not know Bengali, I just said I can speak Bengali, I can get by, but my accent is really bad. But I try. I'm sorry. I think I just made about 400 million Bengali speakers around the world cringe. But that's, I guess, that Neon asked for that. All right. So from YouTube, Catherine Pierce asks, what's coming to Khan Academy next? So there's a lot of things going on at Khan Academy, some of which we have talked about and some of which we're trying to accelerate because of this COVID crisis. English and language arts, many of y'all are familiar. We just launched what's known as a beta version. In software world, beta is like, it's not even quite a first version. It's a version that you put out there to start to learn about how it's used, what's good about it, what's not. We know it's not a perfect version. A lot of the modalities on Khan Academy were first made for the math and sciences, and so you can imagine when we try to put reading comprehension into that same modality, sometimes it's a little bit awkward. Ideally in reading comprehension, it's not just a question and a passage and a question and then another passage and a question. You want a passage and then 4 or 5 questions like we do in our SAT practice. So we're working on, hopefully over the next many months, improving things like that. We are continuing to partner with districts, and we might be accelerating that over the course of this crisis, because more and more districts are thinking about how do they keep students learning in times of school closures. And that's on top of the need that districts have always recognized, that they administer standardized tests. They see that some students are ready for grade level work, some students have a lot of gaps in their knowledge, some students are ready to move ahead, but they've historically not had a good way of differentiating, and tools like Khan Academy could be helpful there. So we're working with districts to provide things like district dashboards and rostering with them. We hope to continue you'll be seeing our chemistry content is getting significantly fleshed out. We are constantly improving our math content. We are hoping to add even more subjects. We're talking to philanthropists about wouldn't it be great if we could fund middle school science and things like that. And so if you're a philanthropist, please contact us if you're interested in funding things like that. Longer term, we're thinking about simple ways to help place and diagnose folks on Khan Academy. So right now we have a lot of the resources that you can start as early as pre-K with Khan Academy kids. You can see Cody right behind me, gazing over my shoulder. But we have most of the content from pre-K all the way through elementary, middle, and high school, for sure in math and science, but increasingly in the humanities and English and language arts. But because there's so much content, sometimes folks are like, where do I start? What do I do if maybe I'm at a certain grade but I have gaps? Or maybe I'm at a certain grade, I'm ready to move ahead, or I already know some of the material. And we've been putting out material during this crisis about how to use our mastery mechanics. If you think you already know some of sixth grade, go take the course challenge. And when you start seeing diminishing returns there, go take the unit test, et cetera, et cetera. But we want to make it more, we want to put that in the experience better, make it a little bit easier for people to understand where they can go and what types of courses maybe we can curate for for those different cases. So the simple answer is we just want to add a lot of content, a lot more content. We want to make it a lot easier to use, find what you need to work on, a lot more engaging. We have I hope we can get this for back to school, but we definitely have some team members who are thinking about how to make the navigation on the site a lot easier. So we definitely have our work cut out a lot there, because we're literally trying to cover 13 years of all of the core academic subjects and build tools for teachers and support classrooms. Simultaneously, we have 59 translation projects around the world, so we are also thinking about how we can support other geographies, in particular places like Brazil and India, and Peru, where we actually have team members there who are helping drive Khan Academy's mission in those geographies. So I'm sure I'm missing things, but that's some of what Khan Academy has going forward.
Hi, Sal. Adnan Abbas Kanchwala from YouTube asks, Sal, what's one thing you want to master while being at home?
One thing I want to master while being at home, I think I'm trying to master balancing life and work. I don't know if that's you wanted a meta level answer like that, but you can imagine now with school closures, my kids are home, and I've said this at other live streams. I think all of us who are, especially, in some degree, my job at Khan Academy has gotten busier. There's more to do. To the previous question, I feel more urgency than ever to try to get some of this stuff done that we've been talking about for a very long time. But if your 5-year-old, is screaming or wants your attention, it's a tough tension, and I don't feel sorry for myself, because I know there's millions of parents around the world that are going through at least what I'm going through, probably far worse. I have a lot of supports at home. My wife, my mother-in-law, we've all been trying to tag team this, and frankly, I've been able to lean on them now that even more, even though my wife has a full-time job as well, and but because of all of the Khan Academy thing picking up. So I think mastering that balance is something that a lot of parents are struggling with right now. And one thing that's clicked in my head recently is, as much urgency as I feel towards my job and as much urgency as I feel towards work, those are moments you don't want to let go of when your 8-year-old, when she asks for help or she wants to show something that she made, or she has a question for you, because that time, their childhood goes by very fast. So I'm trying to just make sure that I can enjoy that and give them the time they need, while also making sure that Khan Academy is able to continue to support many people right now. I think that's the biggest thing. I've had a lifelong quest to I guess you could call it a fitness quest. So there's a lot of things on a diet and nutritional side that I've been trying to master, but sometimes I fall off the wagon. So from YouTube, Mock Par asks, did you expect Khan Academy to be this successful? Mock, yes and no. When I was a kid, and maybe not even so much a kid, even when I was in my 20s, and Khan Academy was I was tutoring my cousins, there's definitely a part of me, and it's still there, that I daydream a lot. And I definitely would have these moments where I'm like, hey, this thing that I'm tutoring my cousins, and if I make tools for them, maybe it scales, and if it's useful for them, maybe it could be useful for millions or billions of people one day. And wouldn't it be cool if one day there was a new type of institution where anyone on the planet had access to learning. And yeah, I've cited being inspired by books like Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, where in that book, galactic civilization, and someone creates a foundation at the edge of the empire to shorten a thousands of year galactic dark ages. And I remember always being inspired by saying, yeah, knowledge is the thing that can most support society and keep us from I guess falling apart and devolving, so to speak. And so I've always thought those kind of, I guess you could say, grand thoughts. But then usually after I let myself go on one of those visions for 5 or 10 minutes, I'd be like, Sal, be realistic. Just put one foot in front of the other. Just do the next right thing, to quote Frozen 2, and move from there. And so I would kind of then just get very, very practical. I could have never imagined that when I was tutoring my cousins 13, 14 years ago, or when I quit my day job about 10 or 11 years ago, that it would have truly evolved as fast as it has. But I always did keep that somewhat delusional thing in the back of my mind of like, well, maybe this could be like a Smithsonian or a great university, or even operate at a scale 100 or 1,000 times larger than that. And now that Khan Academy is of a larger scale, and with this COVID crisis, it is playing I guess you could say, an institutional role here for millions of folks, tens of millions of folks around the world. I'm a little less bashful speaking openly about these aspirations of it becoming a multi-generational institution that can empower billions of folks over time. So I still try to balance, and I think that's the interesting thing about life. You're always trying to balance putting one leg in front of the other and not getting too far ahead of yourself, and staying humble, frankly, with having big goals, big visions, and not being afraid to, to use a baseball analogy, swing for the fences. And so that's always been my hope for Khan Academy. But, I got to say, even today, as far as Khan Academy has gone, I'm always, my stress level can sometimes be pretty high because I'm like, we can't blow it now. We have to go so much further to empower so many more. Dan, more questions?
Yeah, so from YouTube, Ashutosh Tiwari asks, Hi Sal, many people are trying to start a YouTube channel and make tutorials just like you, especially during this crisis. But not everybody is Salman Khan. What advice would you give for someone? Actually, this question, Sal, we also get from a lot of teachers who are having to do remote teaching right now, and they would love your advice in terms of just how to present online.
My number one advice, a lot of times folks end up focusing on the optics and, does it look professional, versus, I would say, the authenticity and the human element of it. And my number one advice to anyone making content, whether they're doing it kind of in a Khan Academy style with a pen tablet, or they're just doing a video like this, is be yourself. You laugh at yourself. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Be as authentic as possible. Human beings can know when someone else is not themselves, when they're not being authentic, when they're reading a script. And you might be reading a script for a very good reason. You want to get all your language precise, et cetera, et cetera. But I think there's a nice balance. You want to have the right vocabulary. You want to get your language right. But there's something powerful about the learner seeing that you are working it through them. You're truly thinking through it with them. I think another point of advice is to view, I've heard from some teachers, it's hard to teach to the screen because you might be used to other folks in the room, and this is where maybe my daydreaming imagination has been an asset. I imagine when I make content, I imagine that I'm talking to my cousins, or my cousins at a certain age, or my family members. I think it creates a connection, and I think even though we are using technology and we're going to be, I'm making the content now and it might be used by thousands of people at another time, they'll feel that connection in it. Another thing I'd say is try to really focus on the connections in concepts. Too many times, not just in math, but pretty much in every subject, concepts are taught in isolation, and even a little comment, a little connection to like, well, yeah, this is why plastics are stretchy. I actually just did a video on amorphous solids, so that's why it's front of mind for me. Or, that's why, actually one of the fun things that actually I didn't include in my video is why eggs become solid when you heat it up, and that's because the proteins denature, and what would be these bound proteins, these globular proteins, they become these kind of stringy things, and they all get all entangled with each other, and so that's why the egg white gets kind of, it kind of becomes an amorphous solid, so to speak. But yeah, if you can connect things to the real world, if you can connect things to what people knew before, in Khan Academy videos, you'll often hear me say, hey, this might look like another concept, but it really is just an extension of completing the square. The quadratic formula is just completing the square for any quadratic, or the quotient rule in calculus really is just the product and the chain rules combined. So I think the more that you can connect things to what learners already know, and there's a lot of learning science behind that as well, that people like to be grounded in what they already know. And most of knowledge is that way. It is connected to other things. So that's my best advice. And have fun doing it. If you don't have fun making the content, the person listening to the content is not going to have fun. And if you're not passionate about the content and excited about it, it's going to be hard for the other person to be excited about it. So one thing I tell myself and everyone at Khan Academy who makes content is, and not just video content actually, even exercises and things like articles, if you're not excited about it, if you don't feel the energy, if you don't see the beauty in the concept, it's going to be very hard for the student to feel that same thing. And we want them to feel that. And the reality is, pretty much every concept has a beauty to it, has an intuitiveness to it, has a connection to other things, and has connection to the real world. So let's see, there's a question, an interesting one from Angel Chabra from YouTube. Are there any positives that resulted, or maybe might result, from the coronavirus epidemic? Well, as you can imagine, as we're in the midst of it, it's hard to see sometimes the silver linings. If I were to, and it's easy to point to a lot of the things that are stressful or not so great about the crisis, if I were to say some of the positives or the silver linings, I talked a little earlier about spending time with family. I think a lot of us, if we're lucky enough to be with our families right now, this is time that, it's in everyday life when we're on doing the daily grind, so to speak. It's easy to take family for granted. It's easy to take friends for granted. And now we, whether it's in person, I'm able to spend more time with my kids, with my wife. This is time we'll never forget and we'll never get back. So I think there's something powerful there. I think this crisis there's something about it that makes us want to reach out to our family members and be more connected with them. I've talked on this live stream about my mom. She's alone, lives alone in New Orleans right now, which is having a very a high per capita incidence of COVID. And my mom, as you can imagine, is in that high risk group. And so just my worry for her physical health and frankly her mental health, because she's living by herself now, I've told myself, Sal, you can't just say, hey, I need to finish this task at work and I'll call my mom tomorrow. You've got to call your mom every day and have a conversation with her. And it's been great. I've been doing it because of the crisis, but I've kind of realized that I should be doing this all the time, that it shouldn't just be during the crisis. And we're having good conversations, even though we're 2,000 miles apart. Better conversations, frankly, than when I call every 3 days or we only chat once a week. So I think that's been important. I've been connecting with friends and family that I haven't talked to for 5-10 years on Zoom and Google Hangouts. So those are positives. I think on the education side, obviously school closures are very suboptimal, but I'm hoping that some of the tools that we might accelerate, Khan Academy and others might accelerate and build to respond to the crisis, those will exist after, so that's a silver lining. I'm hoping that some of the habits, some of the patterns that students and teachers and parents are forming during the crisis will have lasting benefit. If you as a student are learning, hey, I can structure my day, I can keep learning, I can do that during summers, I can do that when I'm an adult, even after I've graduated from high school or college. Those are super useful skills, arguably the most important skills that can last you an entire lifetime. We were just talking about teachers and other folks making lessons online to help their students. That's great. That's going to have lasting implications beyond the crisis. Now that folks realize how important online access at home is, we're seeing a lot of telecom companies, philanthropists, Ray and Barbara Dalio, two philanthropists we know who've been longtime supporters of Khan Academy. They've just distributed 60,000 laptops in Connecticut to low-income high school students. We're seeing school districts like Las Vegas, Clark County. We had Dr. Jara on last week talk about how they are distributing laptops and working with local cable companies to get Wi-Fi access or get online access. These are things that I hope could lay a groundwork that's permanent so that even once we're past this crisis, people will have that access, which is empowering on so many levels. I think, just the cracks that we're seeing in our society, large numbers of people, due to no fault of their own, aren't able to work now because of they were working at a restaurant or a travel agency or an airline, all of these things that even once we get through the worst of the stay-in-place orders, it's unlikely that those industries are going to come back fully. We talked about that last week with Bill Gates. I think that's making all of us recognize and governments recognize that, hey, we probably do need supports for these folks because for no fault of their own, in order to protect the public safety, they're suffering and they need some way to support their families. So regardless of where you're on the political spectrum, I think it's making us all realize that, hey, there's some supports that folks need. So I think all of these types of things as we go through the crisis will hopefully have some positive lasting implications. We could think of more. Feel free to add any that you could think of on the message boards. We're happy to take a look at it. So from Facebook, Samar Abedrabo says, for college students, do you think that we should move to more critical thinking tests that are open book since the works have changed with so much access to information? Samar, I think yes and no. I think there's sometimes a view, you'll hear this, and you'll actually hear this commonly in education circles. Oh, people can Google everything now. Why should people have, facts or content knowledge that they can Google that stuff and then they can just work on the projects or the critical thinking parts of it. Learning science actually tells us, I'm actually reading a book right now about this kind of a survey of learning science, something that we take very seriously at Khan Academy. And the reality is that factual knowledge, that content knowledge, whether it's at a kind of a factual level or at a conceptual level, is super valuable for forming that critical thinking. And so I think there's always going to be a very important place for having that core knowledge, and it will allow you to build more connections. And if you have some of that core knowledge, you don't have to apply as much of your cognitive load when you have to do more complex tasks to those things. One way to think about it is, you're playing basketball, or let's say you're learning a new sport. Let's say you've never played basketball before. You can focus on the rules of the game and maybe movements that are new to you, like dribbling, but you don't have to think about things like walking or jumping. Those are things you know how to do already because they're so automatic. And there's analogs in the learning world there, in math, something like your core multiplication tables. It's of course important to understand what multiplication really is or how it can be represented. But when you're doing algebra, you have to sit and think, wait, is 9 times 6, is it 54 or is it 56? That's going to make it very hard for you to engage in the algebra. Or if you are trying to think critically about we'll talk a situation right now. If you're trying to think about, well, what could be the economic implications of this COVID crisis? If you don't already in the back of your mind have context of saying, okay, well, we've gone through things like this before. You had the Great Depression, which was in the 1930s. And then, okay, what was the historical context there? How did we get out of it? Well, there was World War II. There was the the New Deal. And you could say, well, how much did each of those things contribute? If you don't have some of that knowledge base there, it's very hard to think critically about new situations. So I'm a big proponent, and a lot of what we try to do at Khan Academy is give you that practice, not just at the most basic level of facts, but at the conceptual level and at that understanding, comprehending level, so that you build that fluency so you can go higher and higher up that it's often known as Bloom's cognitive taxonomy, Bloom's cognitive taxonomy of skills, so you can go higher and higher on that. So I don't think it's an either or. I think there's actually a value to having some of that core knowledge. So there's a question from Patty Prentice on Facebook. Hi, I'm a college student. Will the pandemic affect availability of classes offered in the future? I heard that colleges and universities will have fewer students because of the pandemic. Patty, it's a fascinating question. I definitely am not an expert here, and I have been talking to some university administrators and people who are familiar, and I don't think anyone really knows how all of this will settle. As you could imagine, we hope that we're through the worst of the stay-in-place orders and school closures as we go to back to school, and hopefully the colleges and universities like K through 12 will be able to open back up. But you could imagine that if the virus starts going exponential again and starts picking back up, it might have to be closed down again. So it is going to be a hard time for universities. And there is a situation where a lot of students are saying, hey, well, if the university is going virtual, maybe I can just stay virtual. So that some of that might happen, and there are things like virtual universities and MOOCs and things like that. Personally, I found a lot of value in the physical experience of the university. That's where I met my wife. That's where I met some of my best friends that I talked about, that I connect with on a regular basis. Some of whom even helped start Khan Academy and helped other things. So I think college is really powerful from a social connection and building yourself in many dimension point of view. But I think this crisis does make us ask questions of like, well, what aspects are nice to have? What aspects are must-haves? And there's a resourcing question. College is increasingly expensive. And so are there pathways that could be more flexible, that can focus on the must-haves, and that could, leave students with a lot less debt? When we say we're a not-for-profit with a mission of a free world-class education for anyone, anywhere, that's because we don't think someone's education should hold back their ability to be empowered in the world. But we know far too many people, and I know people even in my own family, who the debt they've incurred has been, somewhat debilitating actually for their ability to participate in society because of college. So we'll see how all of this plays out. Well, anyway, these were great questions. We will continue this. We're here every day at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern in the U.S., or whatever time zone you all are in. You can figure it out. It's a place for us to just stay connected, answer questions about education, the economy, viruses. We have an exciting slate of guests. We're probably going to have 2 or 3 guests a week that are interesting and have expertise in different areas. And I'll just remind everyone, stay safe, stay healthy, and if you're in a position to do so, please think about donating to Khan Academy. We need the help, especially if we're able to support more folks through this crisis. Thank you.